we have a large car yard. Somebody comes on site after hours with a baseball bat, which in Australia, where we are, is a little bit odd, but has a baseball bat and starts beating up the cars in the car yard. Basically taking it to the windshield, the headlights, the hoods, things like that, and walks from one side of the front yard all the way down the property, just bashing up every single car along the way. Hello everybody, welcome back to your Security Survival Guide, which is my new working title for the old FAQing Security podcast. I'm Jeremy Vance, and this is a podcast that I'm putting together to help guide people through modern security and the different roadblocks and hurdles and questions that go with that, both from a security integrator and installer and designer point of view, as well as trying to hit as many of the client-facing worries and objections and roadblocks as well. That way everybody has all the facts in front of them and they can make the decisions that will help keep their family and their staff safe, which in the end is really what it's all about. So today we're going to continue on with the best practices that we went through the last time. On our last episode, we went through app 1 and 2, which was knowing you're updating your after hours contacts and then checking your camera system. Today what we're going to go through is we're going to go through walk testing an alarm system, what that is, why it's important, and then we're also going to go through access lists and why it's important to keep your access lists up to date, make sure that everybody there belongs there, that they have the access they need to, and that you don't have random relics from old staff members still active and live in your system. So we can go ahead and get going. So again, welcome to the podcast, and I hope you enjoy. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with walk tests. Now, walk tests in theory are a very simple thing. It's where we actually run a test on the alarm system to make sure that what happens on site actually gets reported to the remote monitoring center. Let's give you a real quick example of how this can go wrong. So I had a client who had a very old system, and that old system never really got checked. They didn't pay for maintenance, they didn't do walk tests. No matter what we sent them, basically the idea was, well, we put the system in and it's going to be fine. Nothing ever happens here. We get that a lot in security, that whole nothing's ever happened, so I don't really need to worry about it. And then when something happens, that's when they worry about it. So we want to be proactive. We don't want to be reactive to events happening. So in this situation, we have a large car yard. Somebody comes on site after hours with a baseball bat, which in Australia, where we are, is a little bit odd, but has a baseball bat and starts beating up the cars in the car yard, basically taking it to the windshield, the headlights, the hoods, things like that, and walks from one side of the front yard all the way down the property, just bashing up every single car along the way. Now, the alarm system actually covered that area, but because it'd been years since the client actually wanted it checked or did a walk test, none of the alarms went off. It was so as far as the control room was concerned, nothing was happening. Because you have to remember, for control rooms, remote control rooms, everything is event-driven. If we don't get an alarm or an alert, they're never going to just bring up your cameras and look at them, right? So we have to make sure that we're getting some alerts through. Now, next door to that car yard, I had another site who did keep their system up and running and had their maintenance done and did their walk test. So as this person walked through the first yard, beating up all the cars, and walked into the neighboring yard, the alarm went off. And then that sent through to the control room. The control room got the alarm, brought up the cameras, was able to see the feedback of the new site, the one that had been checked, and were able to, because they know they're next to each other, they were able to go back and actually check the video of the neighboring site as well to kind of see what was going on, and saw the playback of the guy attacking the cars. They were able to call everybody, get the police down there. Now, the police didn't catch the guy, He ended up running away as the police got there. But so much damage was done because the walk test hadn't been done for however long that system had been running. And again, it wasn't a threat to the client because it never had happened before. So they just decided it wasn't worth it. And that ended up costing them a lot of money. So even though security systems seem like they're just a checkbox for insurance companies, in reality, it can actually help you. You just have to make sure that you're keeping it up to date and make sure it's maintained. Similarly, like to a car. If you have a car but you never check the oil, you never check the tires, sooner or later it's going to break down on you when you actually need it. So with the walk test, that's what that's for. Now, so how do you do a walk test? All right, so this is actually quite simple. Clients on your side, you could do this yourself. You don't need to actually pay for an integrator to come out and do this. You can do it yourself. I do some petrol stations and they do walk tests once a week. Some more corporate clients will do it every month. Some more regional clients will do it every 3 months. Ideally, we want to make sure it's done at least every 3 months. You never know what can happen in that time. That's actually even a slightly long time, but at worst case scenario, every 3 months. So all you do is you call up the control room and you're like, hey, this is Jeremy from whatever site you're from. I'm going to do a walk test. Please put the site on test. Now, when you put the site on test with the control room, they're basically going to allow the signals to come in, but they're not going to action them. They're not going to call or send the police. So you put the site on test, you arm the site, and then you start walking around. Just set off all the alarms you can. So everything, the doors, open the doors, walk in front of motion sensors. If you have an electric fence, try to trigger that without hurting yourself, and set off all the alarms you can. Then at the end, before you get that far, make sure you also hear a siren and a strobe. We want some sort of deterrence. So a light flashing, a siren, something to let people intruding on the site know that what's happening so that they can leave, right? That's what we want. Now, once you're done all that, you go disarm your alarm system and give the control room a call. And then you're going to spend a few minutes on the phone with the control room operator, and you're going to go through and he's going to let you know all of the sites that were triggered and all the ones that weren't, right? So this is kind of what we're looking for. We want to know everything's working. So in reality, the important part's not what came through, but what didn't come through. If all the alarms came through, but none of the alarms came through on the back of the building where somebody would jump the fence, that's a problem, right? So we need to know both what activated and what didn't activate. If you have things that don't activate, that's when you get a hold of your security company. And you're like, so whoever your installer is, your provider, you go, hey, Jeremy, we did a walk test. Things didn't pass. We have several zones that didn't go on alarm. Can you come and check it out? And then at that point, we'll come out, we'll check the detectors, the electronics, the cabling, all that stuff, make sure that the 12 volts running through, that everything's not tampered and going through perfectly. That's stuff that we do for you. So call your security provider at that point. They'll come and check out the site, help you fix whatever the problem is and why those didn't trigger. And at the end of that, they should in fact do their own little walk test for that section to make sure it works, right? So again, that's a walk test. Really simple, but it's such a huge deal. It's one of those things where you never think about it until somebody breaks into your site and your alarm system doesn't work, right? It doesn't matter how many emails I send you. If I was your security provider and I was sending you quarterly emails or 6 months emails, being like, hey, please, we need to do a walk test, whether you do it yourself or we do it, we need to make sure you're safe. If you don't feel it's important, you're just gonna ignore me. You're gonna send all my emails to red and you're not gonna check it. But when it does matter, you wanna make sure that the people and the stuff in your property are safe. And that's how you do it. Just a simple walk test. It takes about 30 minutes every 3 months. Pretty straightforward. All right. All right, so the next on our list, on our best practices list, is the access list and your user list. Now, worth noting is if you don't have my best practice document, email me, send me a DM on whatever you're watching this on, a message, send it on any of my socials. It's not a sales pitch. I will literally send it to you for free. Like, I don't care. I would rather you be protected than for me to find some way to like sell you a product, right? Let me know if you don't have it. I'll send you the PDF. You can do it yourself. If you have questions, I'll answer questions for you. Honestly, I'm just here to help. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about the access control list. So I had a client, and I have a story for all these. These are how these things were developed. But I had a client who was moving from one building to another building, which is literally next door, like to the point that they were actually tearing down a section of the wall so they could transport gear from one warehouse to the new warehouse without actually moving it and transporting it around the buildings. They just went right through the wall. So really close. So we went in, we put a new alarm system into the new building, and both were running at the same time. And at that point, they use swipe cards for all their staff. So they swipe in at the warehouse door, they swipe in at the office door, the comms room has a swipe. It's all secure, all very high tech, right? Which is good. We love it when things use technology to create safe environments. Wonderful. What we found when we actually transferred across the access control list, because they were managing their own access list on the system, which a lot of systems allow you to do. You can add and remove users as you need to. When we transfer the list, I actually took the list and I sat down with them and I popped open my laptop to the software and we're looking at it. And I was like, all right, let's go through the access list together. Half of the users on that access list, the access list that were active, didn't work there. Some hadn't worked there in a year. It was just these cards were floating around somewhere, and anywhere, anybody who had that card could swipe on one of those doors and disarm the entire system and walk into the warehouse. Like a huge, huge hole in security just because it was too much work or not worth the time to go through these user lists and see who wasn't there anymore. So I don't really have for this best practice. A lot of them I have like worst case scenario time list. Like every month you should check your camera system. Every 3 months you should do a walk test. Is a worst case scenario. Access lists are a little bit hard because it depends a lot on how much change you have within your organization. If you're going through a lot, like I have a corporate client where they actually have tied their Active Directory to their access control system, so it's constantly streaming through. They check it often. Like they do audits on the Active Directory and they do audits on the access control system. I have another company that's a nationwide company that has very little movement as far as staff, and they do it once every year. So it really is what is important for you. If you do have staff changes, do them right away. Don't wait. But if it is something where you have to set yourself reminders to do an audit, you're going to base that off of what you kind of need, right? Just keep that in mind. All right, so access control, all you do to update the list and check it is have an active list of your users. You can get the active list off of most panels. So whether it's an InterRange, Gallagher, Protege, you're going to be able to open up the software and see the active list of all the users who are active and can get into your site and use the swipe card system or the mobile control system. All right, go through that list. Anybody that doesn't belong there, get rid of them. That's it. They don't belong there, remove them from the system. If you delete a user from an access control system, you do not delete that user from the log and pass logs. So if I quit and you remove me from the system, every time I used my card in the past stays in the log. It still says Jeremy used his card last Tuesday, even though I'm not in the system now. So you're not going to lose logs, just remove the users, right? The other thing that you can do is all of those systems allow you to set an end date for the user. So if you have somebody who is leaving at the end of the week, you can go into that system and say your last day is Friday. As of Friday, this user is no longer active. The same way you can do a start date. So if I go, all right, Jeremy is starting next Monday, I'm going to give him his card now because he's a new hire, but it's not going to work until next Monday. You can put that into the system as well. They also allow you to do a lot of things with schedules. So if I'm only allowed to use it during business hours, you can set that as a schedule. If somebody else is allowed to use it 24/7, you set that as their schedule. You have a ton of freedom with all of these access control systems. Everything from the really simple iLocks, which are battery-free smart locks, you still can do all that stuff with those, to your high-end Gallaghers and Proteges and Integrities. All of that Everything in between, they all have those functionalities for access control. It's a built-in, it's required. So just keep that in mind. You have a lot of control, but you as a user, if you have that control, you also need to be responsible for keeping that list up to date. If you don't, and you allow somebody to get into your site with an access card that you just decided not to cancel and they're not supposed to be there, and you are in fact putting your staff and your family at risk. So even though it seems like maybe I'm being a little dramatic there, it is important that we do that. So it's important that you keep these up to date. All right, so that kind of covers everything for this episode. I hope that you have learned something and you enjoyed it. I'm pretty boring, but it's actually important information. It's good for you to know these two things: doing your walk test, keeping your access list up to date, very important. Now, if you do need a copy of the best practice sheet, email me, DM me. I'm on every single social media platform on earth. Just send me a DM. I'll send you the PDF of the best practices for free. It's not going to cost you anything. I'm not selling you anything. I'm not even taking any of your information. I will literally give it to you so you can help protect your family and your staff. It's that important to me. So ask me questions, ask me for the PDF. I'll send it to you, and we'll just make sure that we're working together, integrators, myself, and clients, to have a healthy and safe community, right? We'll keep our people, both your staff, your family, visitors, Airbnb guests, everybody is safe if we all work together. All right, you guys have a very good day. Thank you for hanging out with me for this episode. I'll be back for the last two. We have two more on our best practices, so next episode we'll cover those two. Until then, you have a very good day. Stay safe.